Hello, good evening. As usual, we will give a moment for folks to join us who are joining us virtually, as Director Downs is, and then we will get started. I now call this board workshop of the South Obi School Board to order. We will begin with the land acknowledgement. And since Director Jackson is not here, we will turn to Director Johnson.
South Whitby School District would like to begin by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral homelands, originally known as Lushootseed of the coastal Salish peoples, on the lands of the Lower Skagit, Tulalip, Swinomish, Snohomish, and Stillaguamish, and Suquamish, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial and have hunted, fished, gathered, and taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude to the Indigenous people of this territory and for their enduring care and protection of the land in which we currently occupy and share through the Treaty of Point Elliott, signed by 82 tribes in Mukilteo on January 22nd, 1855.
Thank you very much. As a note, this is a board workshop, so this is the opportunity to discuss items on the agenda with members of the community, whether they are here in person or on Zoom. Either way, we will continue to hold ourselves and everyone involved in discussions to our policy 0002, which is our professional communications policy, notably doing our best to maintain the dignity of all involved in the discussion. If you are attending virtually and you have something to say, please use the Q&A function to just throw your name and location up there, and that will give us a cue to pause while you type in the comment that you'd like to make. Please do make sure that that is a complete comment, not just, yes, I agree with that, because most likely by the time it's been noticed and you've typed it in, we will have moved on to something else, and you might be agreeing to something completely different if you just say, I agree. Thank you very much. We have one presentation today before we get into our policy review. That is our staff and student survey. And I will turn it over to Dr. Clifford for that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I want to just send our gratitude, our collective gratitude to the board. When we went through the goal setting this year, and we talked about the CEE data and how it's a lot of data and it's very comprehensive. And we also were talking about and struggling to make sure that the data that we were using was meaningful and relevant and timely. And what we found is that and what the administrators shared is that when they're able to do school level data, that is timely and meaningful, and it's developed and it's really focused, that it's very, very helpful. And so we're here today to present this school level climate student and staff survey. We are going to be transparent in showing all the questions that were asked, and then also the data from pre and post. So we did it twice for both sessions across all levels. And so today we're here to share that, and we'll share a little bit about our process and then dig into the data a little bit, and then we'll have some time for the board to share and reflect on what worked and what are some things that you want us to consider as we move forward. So if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to remind and connect to board goals, and then the next slide is the district superintendent goals, and this really falls under our social emotional learning goal and pillar 1 and pillar 2. And then if you go to the next slide, Our purpose today is to review the school level data that was created for each level. You will see some continuity across each of the schools, and then you also see some tailored questions to each of the schools. So there might be some unique things at each school. We're going to share a little bit about how each school engaged in the data with their staff, and based on the data, what were some action steps that they took. And then, like I said, we'll have some board feedback. So before we get into the actual work, the next slide, thank you. We did consider past CEE survey questions. We considered board input because when we were developing our my superintendent goals and the district goals around this area, there was a list of identified questions that were important. We did not take all of them, but we did consider those as part of this factor. The other thing I didn't add on here is we also connected to and looked at the school SIPs. And then we referenced Panorama survey questions. Panorama is another platform. Their questions are a little bit user friendly, I think, and a little bit more school focused, where CEE is really about school improvement focused. This is more student and school culture climate friendly in a different way. And so we did reference and use those as guiding points because we wanted to make sure that the survey questions had a level of rigor, research, and integrity behind the research and rigor, and that we weren't just creating questions that didn't have some merit in the way that they were formulated. So we did model after and leverage those three areas. How we're going to design today is we're going to actually start backwards often, or I think we normally start with the high school, and then we normally end with the elementary school when we do our SIP. So we're going to start with the elementary school. And for the first survey data set, the elementary school is going to lead you through, as if you were their building leadership team, lead you through engaging with the data to just give you kind of a real world experience about what that engagement looks like. Then, and then we'll look at the staff survey of the elementary school. And from that point on, the staff student data from the rest of the schools, we're just going to do notice and wonderings. And we'll look at those. And as each of the folks each of the levels share, they'll give you a brief update after we look at the survey data about, or at some point in their presentation, about what actions or engagement they're doing and actions that they've taken. And then at the end, we'll have that reflection time.
Sounds good. Sounds like there was a lot of work that went into this, and I thank you very much for putting it all together.
Yes. Yeah. And I do want to say that the development of these surveys took a considerable amount of time as a group and then as individuals. So they really were very, very intentional. All right, I'm going to hand it over to the team. So we're going to start with Miss Principal Richards and Miss Coda.
Great. Thank you so much. We're really excited. We really look at going through these data sets as an opportunity, regardless of what we're being told, whether it's good or whether it's areas that we really need to improve upon. It's an opportunity for us. So that's really the approach that we take. If you go to the next slide, please. So as Dr. Clifford indicated, we're going to invite you to be a member of our building leadership team today, which is made up of about 10 folks from our building, teachers from each grade band, and various other folks. And that's really the team. We meet every 2 weeks, and they work with us on a range of things, especially on our school improvement plan. They're our key team. So tonight what we're going to do is I'm going to go through this process with you with our social emotional learning data from late fall, early winter to spring. About 2 weeks ago, we did that second set. Next slide. Oh, wait 1 second. Yeah, we're going to look at the data and really looking at the experience of our students. And we do that to allow ourselves to refine those strategies for meeting our SEL goals. Next slide, please. So we're going to start by going through, this would be a gallery walk with our actual BLT team. We often put up big strips of paper, we put that data up, and we provide an opportunity for people to scratch out some notes, and then we come back together and really have those discussions. For you tonight, for board members, we ask you to have a pen ready. We're going to talk about some specific elements that we want you to be looking for, and then we'll have a moment to reflect and discuss that. So we're going to look at the next slide, please. And these are the elements that we want you to be taking a peek at. What are you noticing about that shift from fall to spring? What stands out? What immediately jumps out or surprises you? The wonder, what questions does this raise? And this is what we start with this first round with our BLT team, and then we come back and we really define and refine those questions that have come up as a result of this initial data dive. The insight that you're looking at, what do you recommend based on what we're seeing tonight as our key priorities as we start with refining our SEL practices for next year? And then any wins or growth areas that you'd like to point out and discuss. So after we go through the data set, then we'd like you to take a 1 minute of silent think time, make some notes as we go along, and then we'd want you to share out one insight that you gained from looking at tonight's data. Next slide, please. So this is the first data set. Some of this, comes as a surprise to us. And data, like anything, depends on the day of the week. It depends the mood the people are in that take it. So this is a snapshot. We look for trends. This SEL student survey data is not anonymous. We know the children, and we let them know that up front because if we have kids that are reflecting almost never, as an example, we follow up with every one of those children, either Ms. Coder, myself, or Aaron Gutzmer. We meet with them, we talk through them, we look for opportunities to support them in whatever area they're indicating that they're just not feeling in that area. But this is our data. We saw a little bit of growth. I feel safe at school from fall. You can see we just are focusing on the almost always tonight, but you can see the other trends. Next slide, please. I'm not going to give comments at this point, really. We're just going through it and inviting you to take that opportunity to look at those key elements. I feel safe and comfortable in my classroom. We went from 71% to 68.6%. And again, we had some good conversations with students around some of these areas. Next slide, please. I feel safe and comfortable in the lunchroom. As you know, this has been a critical area. I am going to say a couple things. I can't help myself. This has been a critical area for us to focus on. We've put a lot of initiatives into place, and we still have work to do. That's still a tough number. We've got a lot. Anybody ever been in our cafeteria? There's a lot of children in there, and but we're continuing to put positive behavior supports into this program. Next slide, please. Let's see, that looks like repeats. Oh, that should say recess. I'm sorry, this is a recess. We did bump up from 56.4 to 59.1. We do have a new playground. So we really revisited the playground rules and initiatives at the beginning of the year or after the new playground came in. Next slide, please. I have friends at school. This really speaks to, I think, our SEL curriculum in the morning, our morning meetings, really focusing on making sure every child has a friend or that we're supporting friendship groups. Next slide, please. I feel proud of our school. This was a dip, and I'm super curious personally about this one. Still feel good about those numbers, but we're going to look more deeply at that. Next slide, please. If I have a problem, I can solve it or find an adult to help me. I think this is an area that we're going to continue to focus on in terms of helping our children. When you think about a third grader, really knowing what that means, who those people are, how we support that with every child. Next slide, please. I know how to be a good friend and class partner, and friend. A little bump there from 82.8 to 83.8. Next slide, please. I can understand how other people feel. Again, little bump here, and this is a good one, really focusing on our SEL Caring School Communities curriculum, does a lot of work in this area. Next slide, please. I feel like I belong in my school, in my classroom, and in my school community. Really important focus area for us. So we've already been talking about what does this really look like for our kids? How do our larger teaching staff, do we have conversations? And that's part of the plan for fall. Even though I won't be here, we're already talking about what that looks like as we come back. Next slide, please. My teacher likes and cares about me. You can see those numbers, and we have some insights into some changes that occurred that have impacted these numbers. Next slide, please. I work well with most of my classmates. A nice bump there. And that really goes to that school community, classroom community culture. Next slide, please. I can work and play well with people who are different from me. This is again with our equity work, with our LSCI work. We're seeing the impacts of some growth in those areas. Next slide, please. When I make mistakes, I learn from them. Curious. A little dip there. And again, I think about the difference between, a third grader and a fifth grader and what their perceptions are, and helping them to understand the language and the words that we're using in some of these areas makes a difference. Next slide, please. Summary. We took, again, every single comment. We put it into this summary. This gives us another focus area in terms of, that the playground. We know that we need more people out there. That's an area for us that we're going to, and same with the cafeteria. So looking at staffing and how we're effectively using our staffing to make sure those concerns are being addressed for our kids. Lots of positives, of course, about loving their school. And then lots of suggestions about our clubs and activities. So next slide, please. So would love you to take a moment to look at the notes that you reviewed as board members, and would love to hear your notices, wonders, insights, or any high impact data points that you'd like to share. Give it a minute here. Let me know when you feel like you have one element that you'd like to share.
Well, Susie, first and foremost, I appreciate that the students would like us to upgrade our toilet paper. That one definitely stood out to me. But I also just wanted to call out the I feel comfortable and safe in the lunchroom, and then also I feel comfortable and safe in my classroom, and just like noticing that when you take data in the fall, sometimes some of our students who are struggling behaviorally are kind of in a honeymoon phase. And just as the year goes on, there's more dynamics, there's more social pieces that come out. And so while we always want to improve those scores and we want every student to absolutely feel safe in a classroom, I can understand where that number may fluctuate in the range that it did, just depending on some of those dynamics. And it takes time to learn students and to figure out what kind of supports that they need behaviorally. And sometimes there is some impact to students as we are figuring out that process.
Thank you, Andre. Appreciate that.
Ditto the appreciation. This is so easy to look at and take notes on and really focus on specific things. A noticing that I had is that when the question is relative to individuals, like my friends, my teacher, then those results are high and stay high or at about the same rate. When it gets into spaces or larger concepts of how we relate to people, that's where some of those are at 60s, and are a little wavy. So that was interesting data for me to swirl around in my head and think about. And then the notes from kids, thank you for adding those little anecdotal pieces. What I noticed is that kids, predictably and wisely, are looking for more social time, more movement, and more choices.
I have a notice and a wonder. So I noticed that for some of these, even for me as an adult, I don't know if I would say always, like I don't always know what other people are feeling. And so I strive to increase that, but I don't know if I would put always. So I think some of these we want to strive for always, like feeling safe and belonging, but some of them are just part of being a human and dealing with other human, and the struggle might be lifelong. My wonder is, of all of these, what should we as the BLT here focus on improving? What would have the strongest correlation towards improving the well-being and the outcomes for our students?
Yeah, I was my notice was kind of echoing what Andrea was talking about, and how just more generally, things like being comfortable in the lunchroom. As the year progresses, students become more comfortable and kind of, I guess, let loose like a little bit. And so they're probably a little bit more just like relaxed and willing to not like be as, I suppose, professional, for lack of a better word, as they could be.
I was just wondering because you said you were following up with students about the data, right? Okay. Would you say like there's anything you're doing between like the end of this year and the start of next year to maybe like raise the data a bit, like for the fall survey, I think?
I think continuing to reach out. We have different folks in the building who are having ongoing connections with some of those students who have indicated some of those concerns. So as an example, Ms. Gutzmer, our school psychologist, she has a few lunch bunch groups that come in and have lunch in her office, just making sure we're really providing that that safe place and safe space and safe adults for them, and looking how do we expand those opportunities for the coming year. Great question. Thank you.
So a couple things that I noticed. One was that there's lots of room in the sometimes. I remember talking to the CE people about that middle area being the area of opportunity. So there's lots of room for movement there. The one thing I really noticed was that the numbers for them, as the students saying that they felt safe and comfortable, were higher in the classrooms, but they wanted more time out of the classrooms. So that tells me that would be an area that would need a lot of effort if we're going to be increasing their opportunities outside those classrooms. That it's going to take a lot of focus from the building leadership team on those areas to make them feel more comfortable there if they're spending more time there.
Two things. There's a difference in response rate. We had a higher response rate. So there may be some students that didn't respond at the initial survey that did respond in the second survey. All of our surveys, the second surveys, were done right after SBA testing. And we also are a little bit further along in our bond project. So those are some things that I just want to, and that elementary is now differently impacted around the construction than they were at the beginning of the year. So just some things to just keep in the back of your mind.
It'll be good to continue to grow longitudinal data on those points.
Yes. Wendy.
All right. I love how you phrase those questions. You brought it down to their level. So thank you. Something they can relate to and answer and give input on understanding it. What I would be curious to know, since COVID, how those numbers have fluctuated, because I know a lot of kiddos are still kind of coming out of COVID in a sense on the emotional social level. The things that stood out to me that I wonder about would be the element of safety. And I'm thrilled to hear that you're having these cohorts with the psychologists. I think that's huge because that connection is such an important piece. I know that bullying is definitely an aspect for all grades. I'm wondering, I'd be curious to know what's working and what's not working on that aspect, because that also creates a disconnect for belonging and safety. So I guess I'm one of those that like to compare numbers for previous and see, are we improving? Because in a year, people are coming in and this is all new and, bright lights, overload versus the end of the year. But over the years, what have you seen? I'm just curious.
There's been so many fluctuations since COVID. It's been interesting to kind of track it was fairly consistent. And this year we've had a pretty big influx of new students. And sometimes that when you get however many new students we had, it can change the dynamic a little bit too, as they're coming into a brand new system. We also have, I think there's more families and more children that are struggling since COVID. I think the impacts are much bigger than, we really knew, and that we continue to see some of those challenges, especially around the mental health and social emotional health of families and kids.
And then some of the questions very similar to the CEE as far as safety. So what stood out to you in comparison to that survey?
I think that this is a little more straightforward. I mean, what you had mentioned in the beginning, that we're trying to gear, when you think about there's 8-year-olds taking this survey and really trying to bring it down to a level that makes sense to them. And it's tough in a way because we don't try to preload too much, right? And one child's idea of safety and another, and so we're still struggling with that conversation around, do we do some pre-teaching around what these questions really mean? Or do we just allow a child to, from their own perspective? So it's a question we're still grappling with.
Yeah. I mean, when you work with children, you're very careful at what narrative you
Yes,
give, right?
exactly.
And you kind of allow them to tell the story however they see it with the words they choose. So I was very happy to see that you brought it down to a level that is more relative to them and relatable.
Yeah.
So that was good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Building on that, I also really appreciate the verbiage and the repetition. I think that that's going to become really valuable as we go forward, seeing not only trends within a year, but trends within fall surveys, within spring surveys, and within all of the surveys. And seeing them at that verbiage level that is appropriate, I think is really good. And I think that actually ties in very nicely with Joe's wondering about the almost always and almost never, and whether maybe I was just thinking maybe that's something like often, sometimes, and rarely, rather than almost always, sometimes, and almost never. Because to your point, when you start talking always and never, even if there's a qualifier, yeah, I think that might make things a little clearer what we're asking.
I think I appreciate what Gwendy said too about the language itself and the different grade levels. My question is, like we already said, that people define safety differently, and that word means different things to different people. And so I know as an adult who is embedded in schools that your staff works to create a safe space. Is that named as a safe space for the kids? You know what I mean? Do they know that my teacher high fives me or lets me hug them? Do they know that that's safety? Do they know that that term means I feel comfortable here?
Yeah, there might be some opportunity to split some of these questions into safety and comfort. Or there was one other one that I was looking at, I can solve a problem or find an adult that can help me. Because yes, it's good to know the sum total of all that, but those are also two different questions that would be interesting to know the answer to. So there might be some opportunity to, without bloating the survey horribly, because they are 3rd through 5th graders, and we don't want to overwhelm them. And that was part of the reason to go away from CE. There might be some opportunity to get a little more specific while still staying age appropriate.
Yeah, and that's a big conversation we're having right now, just the language of the survey.
I have to also note that some of this is about age appropriateness, like the empathy question. The 3rd and 4th graders aren't going to have empathy all the time. They're still learning that. Exactly. We're still talking about that in the play and singing delightful songs about it. So I'm not surprised at where those numbers are, specifically the big sometimes in that one in particular, because it is a skill that is still being learned at that age. Yeah.
I was just wondering, how are you addressing their feedback? Like when they're like, could we get better toilet paper? Could we get longer recess? Like, or a later start time. Like, what are you saying when they ask you about that?
We're not able to address those really specific ones. It's the big, three, like I don't feel safe, hardly ever do I feel safe at school or in my classroom. Those are or I don't have friends. Those are the targeted questions that we're meeting individually with kids. Toilet paper, not so much.
Was it later start time or earlier or? Yeah. Yeah, because that was my question, is whether they wanted it earlier or later. And it, and it might change based on their age. Yeah.
So one other thing I noticed, and I'm always happy to see this because whether it be IEP meetings or just kiddos in general, the answers that they gave when it was was confidence was high. And now we just need to work on the comfort level and the safety and the security. Because I always say if a kid's confidence level is 0, we can all go home. Like they're not going to learn, they're not going to feel safe, they're not going to thrive. I mean, it's just it's all connected to that. But the other piece, and I'm a realist here, and I live off of data. I mean, 50 or 60% scores around safety and security. We can get those confidence levels up if we increase that feeling of security and safety. That's huge because kids really feel like they can take their confidence and then do something with it. That it's an action ability. So
That also sort of led to an interesting I-they gap. To go back to the CEE discussions earlier of, I feel confident about this thing, but when we start talking about we and they, there's less confidence.
So if you all are okay, I would love for Principal Richards to just how would you close your BLT with this conversation?
I think that the work is really it's having these conversations and wondering, and then taking that. I love to take the feedback and the comments and put it into a document that we can then go to that next level of, okay, what are the actionable items here based on, and what are we going to prioritize? And that's part of, if we did the actual gallery walk, where we would ask staff to be prioritizing, our BLT team to be prioritizing what we're going to really dig into for fall, because
I would also urge you to bring those wonderings and those ideas when we start working on goals for next year. Because these are a great way to go from goals to evaluation to goals for the next year, to keep building on the successes that we have and improve the areas that need it. Yeah.
Now we're going to go at a little bit faster pace because that was really intentionally designed to give you a different experience. We are going to review the data, and Ms. Beccaro, can you lick well, you all can see it you're all on, so you can see it in front of you. Okay. And we'll just review it, and then we'll do notice and wonderings. Are you going to do the staff survey really quickly? We got to go back to the elementary school and click on the staff link. Here we go.
Okay, I'm always trying to talk slower in these meetings, so I'll just pick up the pace here. So are you able to close that? Yeah, thank you. So we had, Dr. Clifford already spoke to how we tried to have some continuity between our surveys, but also wanted to be very specific so that it's meaningful and impactful for what we do. So our first question was, how valuable has the math-focused professional development with Tina Mott been for you this year? And you can see these results. This was good feedback for us. This was somebody that the staff has asked to bring in. And so it was good to find the impact of them and how valuable they found it. We have a lot of not applicable to my role because we have paraeducator staff or classified staff versus certificated who would have attended those trainings. The next question, and if I'm going too fast, please let me know. But I also know the board has this data in front of them. So Question 2, how valuable has the SEL or LSCI behavioral support focused professional development been for you so far this year? And you can see pretty favorable and to some degree with valuable, extremely valuable, and then slightly valuable. So I think that's been positive. And that's with our work with Sarah Dominguez through the LSCI cohort that we've had. We can go to the next one unless you want me to slow down. Good. How confident are you using proactive and restorative behavioral practices? And this relates directly back to both the SEL curriculum that we have and also the LSCI work that we've been doing with with Sarah Dominguez this year. It's always hard with these because I always want green to associate with positive, so trying to get those colors aligned, but that's what we got. All right, question 4. This is how valuable has the behavioral support focused professional development for paraeducators been? And again, that's where we see not applicable to my role for the certificated staff. And that's been, I think we did our final training just today. So that's with our BCBA. Manya leads those trainings, and that's around kind of similar practices that with LCI as far as how to engage with students. Go to question 5. How often does your SEL behavioral support professional developments help you explore new ideas? And this one is a little bit tricky too. I know we're just looking at the data, kind of noticing and wondering, but I do want to say we do have a lot of our staff that was trained in a big way with the LSCI. So we had a big cohort that attended over two different summers that then again received this refresher throughout the year. So some of the ideas may not be new. And then moving on to question 6. How confident are you regarding implementation of strategies and identifying resources to support students who have unique learning needs? And you can see we have our winter and then some improvement there in some ways with the confident and the one thing that I will have to say through the survey is this was anonymous. And that's the little bit of a piece for me of not being able to check in with the teachers who aren't confident and remedy that. So that's a wondering I have as well. Question 7. How connected do you feel to others, adults at your school? And this is part of, if we think about our board goal, a sense of belonging. So this is directly related to our SIP, not just for students, but for staff as well. And I would like to mention that we have a lot of new staff at the elementary school this year. So this was something really new for us. I think we have 7 or 8 teachers that are new, plus tons of paraeducator staff. Question 7. How supported do you feel from leadership at your school? And again, we had 34 responses in spring, so just a little bit up from the fall or from winter. So that's, a couple of staff members that I would like to be able to check in with if I could. And question 9. How confident are you that you can engage students who are typically not motivated? When that extremely confident, I'm glad for that. Question 10. How positive are the attitudes of your colleagues? And the next question, I think it's 11. How positive is the tone that school leaders set for the culture of the school? Question 12. what extent are staff trusted as professionals to be effective in their role? Do you trust them? And question 13. How effective do you feel at your job right now? And I believe this might be our final question here. And this is, how comfortable are you engaging in difficult conversations? And the numbers don't have any titles to them, but with 1 not very comfortable and then 5 being are most comfortable. And then we did have an opportunity where staff could provide open feedback. It wasn't required, so not every staff member out of the 34 responses did respond with open feedback. And so that's what we have as well. Takeaways, which I'll just go through this quickly. Just that we're focused on student success, we're student-centered, and I'm going to scroll on mine here so I don't have to read directly from that. You can keep scrolling, Christy. So having trust amongst each other and also appreciative of autonomy. Staff appreciate having the autonomy and agency and able to adapt curriculum and supplement lessons to meet the unique needs of their students. Appreciating transparency, especially with budget or hiring things that have been happening. Staff have noted that the administration's responsiveness and communication is highly valued. There is a desire for more connection. So a clear call for more collaboration and more meetings, but more meetings like meaningful meetings. So like we want time together to be informed. Like what's going on? Can we have a quick check-in? Oftentimes when you have PD, it's like, we're going to go learn this thing. And sometimes you just want time together. We've been really lucky this year that the professional development that we have has been really uniquely tailored to the needs of our staff. And so the feedback from those PDs have been, we would like time together. So more connection together so that we can work together as a team and keep student at the center of our practice. Some ways that we can grow is, so sometimes there can be this feeling of daily management to kind of like, what is our long-term inspiration and vision? An opportunity to integrate career exploration, goal setting into the K-5 experience, helping students to see a world of possibility beyond their immediate surroundings. And again, this is a summary of about a handful, maybe like 7 or so respondents out of the total. So this doesn't collectively represent everybody's thoughts. Cultivate a mindset where every child is seen through a lens of potential. And so that's kind of speaking to that positivity, like how positive are your colleagues? And then making sure we have behavior that is a unified approach to handling student behavior and a calm, predictable environment, and moving from reactive, seemingly band-aid solutions to more front-loaded systems of clear school-wide expectations. And then a staff handbook. Like I said, we had so many new staff this year that it's like, yeah, you'd want to know what to do. So let's guide you and orient that. We were able to have mentors and peer coaching and things like that, but it was an opportunity for us to recognize where can we help orient the adults working in our building. You think we're good? Okay. Yeah. Well, there's so much to go through. Yeah. We're moving on, or notice and wonders.
Quick notice and wonders, yeah.
I noticed that 100% of the survey respondents are at least somewhat confident in implementing restorative justice practices, which I think is a huge win that we should celebrate, considering that just a few years ago, we were starting on this path. And so it seems like there's still some folks who would want even more confidence, but no one is at the starting line anymore. Everyone is on their journey. And then a wonder, I noticed a series of questions that use the word confidence. I have confidence in blank. And the number from winter to spring decreased. However, there was a question about feeling effective in your work, and that one increased. And it's seemingly a contradiction, but I've seen this pattern before in organizational workplace surveys. And there's a theory around like the valley of confidence when one is applying new skills for the first time. So my wonder is if this is an instance of that.
Can I add on, because it's just timely? My wonder was, do the staff know more about how to support students differently than they understood at the beginning, and now feel like there's a gap in their ability now that they have a deeper understanding and know that there's more strategies that they could leverage?
It feels like there's an opportunity for a follow-up that would be not anonymous, where it's like looking for feedback on how we can work on these specific items, whether that's in a group or whether it's people sending individual information to administrators about their situation if they're having problems or something. Because my wonder was how to reach those who aren't feeling confident or aren't feeling or are feeling less effective when it is anonymous, but it has to be anonymous to get good data. So my wonder is if there's a way to open that up so that they feel comfortable connecting with the administration and each other, because a lot of the learning isn't going to be top down. It's going to be amongst their own teams and with each other. A more prosaic wonder is, I wonder if it would be possible to get those graphs that have the not applicable without the not applicable, because it was hard to compare some of the percentages to see if how they had shifted when the not applicable had shifted also. So if there's a way to just drop that and have a percentage of the rest of them, I think that would be very valuable for looking at how that changes as we go longitudinally.
I actually have a couple clarifying questions. Was this for all staff or just in this building? Just in this building. And then the last question, it was presented differently. Can I get some clarification around that?
Like, yeah.
What you can't hear. How comfortable are you engaging with difficult conversations? And so this was actually formatted similar to the panorama question that we had. And so when we were looking for inspiration, that was a format that they had that was a little bit different as far as like not having the bar graph, as far as how to represent that data.
Perfect. And I think that was very similar to one of the questions on the CE survey is how do you feel comfortable suggesting change or having tough conversations? And I saw that as an area that we can continue to work on, but I'm happy to hear that the connection is, so my wonder is, how can we work on that? And more so than that is just hearing the connection with a lot of new staff is really good. Tells me the morale is up. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're trying to move along on this one, not go quite as deep.
Okay. Go ahead, Mrs. Phillips.
To see if we were going student or staff or students. Great. No, students great. Yes, please. This was done last Friday. We were 2 days into SBAC, so and our teachers are very responsive to the schedules in SBAC. So a lot we're utilizing social emotional needs over academic needs after a long day of testing. This one, the first question of how are you feeling while construction is happening? We're seeing a shift because there has been changes throughout the year or changes in access to things. So there are some areas that we're cognizant of. And as we're moving into next year, thinking about how we present information for students and families that's digestible and clear, including wayfinding and then videos so that students understand what is it going to look like on September 8th when I walk into school myself as a middle schooler, different from high school, because we are going to have more changing, will have more direct impact this coming school year. So this has been helpful for us to see what these types of disruptions this year are going to look like in comparison, and how we can plan and mitigate anxiety, stress, etc. Next slide. This one we asked winter and spring. One of our focuses is free, accessible activities for all students in a celebratory fashion. So on a 1 to 5 scale, how are they enjoying our school events, largely put on by leadership or ASB? And students have given that, and they've also given feedback as to what other type of experiences they might have. Some are attainable and some are maybe a little out of the budget, but we love the creativity. And we also want to know that we're meeting their interest and their needs when it comes to activities that we use to celebrate student success and celebrate and acknowledge our social emotional needs as students as well. You'll notice that it shifted from bar to pie because we were talking about this in fall. It was one of those questions about how are we approaching this question? How is it accessible for 11 to 14-year-olds? So from fall to spring, we added on when I need help, someone helps me. So that light blue in the pie was added on. And a lot of these questions stem from Panorama, so the responses are driven by that. I do think it's worth the conversation to ask maybe like the stats class or someone with regard to what type of accuracy are we getting from this. So we added that on knowing that a lot of the feedback from the fall survey said, I didn't really know how to answer this because if I do, I need. So we decided to add that to see how that varies for us. And some of the open-ended responses. So this was addition, and this is pretty consistent from fall, winter to spring. Most common is family outside. Professional sport, students have outside supports, which is great. Other trusted adults. This was interesting to myself and Ms. Grimm, how we're identified or seen, our titles or whatnot. So that was interesting. And then a couple did not seek help, noted they already had the help they need, rarely needed it, or did not need extra guidance. So we take that as information, but still make a focal point to identify that or be available. This is one of our longitudinal ones when it comes to, do they have someone on campus? Fall to spring, a little bit of a shift. And so the one we like to add with this is optional. If you marked no, talk to us about that. A couple students wrote some things. So I don't know if you've been in a Google form lately, but it's taking your information and condensing it. So doing that, we like the graph and data, and then we also like to get some of the information. So a couple students noted lack of privacy or concern with regarding to staff, or they felt like it was irrelevant to school, but they utilize talking to family or friends outside of school. One student noted being too shy or nervous to interact with new people. General satisfaction or no need for help. The difficulty accessing support. We have a couple teachers when they do their Monday morning kind of bell ringer activity. It asks every week, would they like to speak to a counselor? And so that's our second year of that. And so a lot of self-referrals come in a way so it's not having to go and do it verbally in person. I'm still trying to digest this last one. I think they want a class to skip a class for peaceful work and extending the passing period. We've always, I don't know how relevant it is to the question, but it's a conversation we have. We've tracked it, the 5-minute passing periods meets the needs. The next one is, I like this one because it allows me to fill a lot of people's cup. So give a shout out to a staff member, friend, family, adult. And so part of what I get to do when we do this is I get to grab these snapshots and share it with staff. One I thought was really fantastic was they're acknowledging our cafeteria staff go above and beyond to acknowledge students. So it's not just a teacher or someone in the office. It's everyone in school plays a role, and that our students see that. I also, for the most part, left their verbiage or vernacular. So being nice and chill is their language. Again, shout outs to families, parents, grandparents, people outside of school, bus drivers, coaches, and then friends. So it's just nice to get a little insight into who they're acknowledging as their trusted people in their life. Down, looking at peer conflict and how they can ask for help when needed. This one it kind of aligns to the restorative work that we continue to do and empowering students speak up at school practices that were slower to roll out than high school, but still a component within our culture, and equipping us with the right language or the tools for students to be able to do that. And then looking also at I don't experience conflict with peers is an interesting one. I find that interesting. And then we tend to see the patterns of the three assessments. Those students that say I don't experience conflict with peers tend to choose that in a longitudinal way. So like you said, maybe just a personality trait of it's not something I engage with, so I don't feel the need to respond to this. This is spring. Students know and follow school rules, procedures, and common areas. So this one is one we think about how we share this information, reteach it, have visual responses to it. And I love the lunchroom. It's my classroom is kind of how I see it. And it is an area that is an ongoing space that I think about as how I support students within it and opportunities for it. Most of the feedback when it comes to this is just the overload of sensory. It's really loud. It's XYZ. So trying to accommodate that and thinking about how our clubs are or other alternative places are meeting both staff needs, but then also our students' needs. So this is an ongoing one that we're really trying to be conscious of what it's going to look like. Our building leadership team is talking a lot about the transition with construction next year and how to maintain a safe space for middle school, but also with the conditions that will be part of construction. The most important part of middle school, do you have a friend or friends from school who you can count on? So that percentage is, with the difference in responses, it's about the same. So we're tracking, and we're going to be doing this as a staff next Wednesday, looking at those students and who longitudinally, or what do we know that's going on socially? Is this a one-off event that we know we're having a struggle with friends, or is this something that we're seeing as a pattern? And what can we do to support connection? Especially as new students arrive. We had some new students arrive recently. And one of our ongoing conversations is, as I get to know these new students, who do I think would be a good person to try to connect them with so that they have a person? We have students that give tours and they're that friendly face first few days and they try to do check-ins, but where can we deepen those connections based off of what we learn about them as they get here and try to build those social connections beyond us adults or students giving them tours? A couple years ago, we started asking this question, and it's looking again at if the students say no trusted adult on campus, they're not acknowledging anyone outside of campus or a family member at home. This goes to our student support team where we look at this and identify those students and what type of interventions and supports we need to provide for that student to ensure that they have someone in their life that they feel that they can trust or can count on. We have fantastic student support specialists, Ms. Grimm, Ms. Laura, and Ms. Berg or Ms. Marguerite. So we asked this question, I think it's the second Friday of the school year, and then again in spring. So it's embedded into our advisory, into those questions where our teachers are asking if they would like to self-refer. So this is a goal of ours in order for students to know and how to access them, not just knowing who they are when they're walking around, but how do I access these people? So that is a frequent reintroduction through advisory, which we have every Friday. There's still an area of opportunity there. Again, recess is a conversation. Our sixth grade students just finished persuasive essays that are coming my way about recess. So I haven't got to read them yet, but the goal is to persuade me to add recess to our schedule. We didn't ask this question in the fall because when we were doing this, there was a lot of explicit instruction and introduction to the lunchroom, the lunchtime expectations, the courtyard, and then going, we call it Outback. If you ever talk to a student, sport court or Outback, where they're allowed to go, and for lack of a better word, a sixth grader would call it recess, an eighth grader would call it hanging out back, where they're allowed to play and have structured games, activities, fresh air. And then in the winter months, Mr. Jakainen runs intramural games. So there's tournaments every week of typically what's already been taught in PE. So they're not going to go play pickleball if they haven't been through the unit. So it's some coordination of, you already know the rules because you explicitly got it taught in PE. everyone can play. And so it's giving them those movement and social opportunities. So it's interesting to see the students who take advantage of that and use it for movement. It's also just a really enjoyable space for me to go and enjoy our students age appropriately engaging in activities. So this is one we're still going to continue to work on. We've had limitations with construction. Our sport court space has shrunk a little bit. So looking at safe opportunities for those movements. Fresh air is the ideal, but intramurals are always offered in winter months. So thinking about how we access that and what we give them. We asked for feedback on what equipment they want purchased. So we just did a schools foundation. We invested in some more volleyballs and football. Students are thinking about fall sports and they're practicing what they're getting ready for. And hacky sacks. Hacky sacks are back. So things like that. But it's also asking, when you go out there, what do you want to play with? So it's bringing those things and having them accessible for them. So if you have a hacky sack skill and want to come hang out with us, that'd be great. So what we do with this information, as I was saying, we have fall, winter, and now we have spring. So myself, Ms. Grimm, and internal admin have looked through this, BLT, student support, and then as an entire staff next Wednesday in our early release time, we're going to look at this. And what's nice about Ms. Grimm, my school counselor, she can isolate this by student. So she's looking for patterns and trends. So as a staff, we're asking ourselves through protocols and questions of how are we engaging with and supporting our students? And what is this feedback telling us? What do we need to do? Like Lulu's question is, what do we need to do to prepare for fall so that we can anticipate our students' needs and preventatively be there to provide for them?
Let's take a moment to see if there are any wonderings on this real quick, just so we don't have both the staff and student, if there's anything that. I had a quick wondering on whether or not there was an overlap between the no's on do you have a friend and do you have a trusted outside adult, because those would be the students that would need the most assistance. I think those who answered no to both of those questions. I'm sure that y'all are looking at that, but that's just something that cued in my mind as I was looking at those two slides back to back, that there are going to be possibly or probably a significant overlap in that. Yeah.
It's the overlap in that and then the overlap longitudinally.
Yes.
And is there a pattern from fall to winter to spring where we have still not established a trusting relationship with someone internal or external, peer-to-peer? And if so, we need to up our intervention and supports, or is it a one-off and we're aware of something that's happening and we can just provide a little extra support as we navigate the complex social worlds of middle school?
Yes. I love the shout outs to the classified staff interested. I love seeing that it's not just classroom teachers that people are looking to, because all of those jobs, and it shows the importance of all of those roles and positions. I saw an interesting thing with the people following school rules, that the agree percentage stayed about the same, but the disagree and strongly agree shifted quite a lot around it, probably on each side of it, but it was an interesting shift that might be interesting to dig into a little bit more. Sorry, I'm a data nerd too.
Any other noticing and wonderings? Okay. You want to go to staff now?
Of course. Staff, we asked, it says winter, we spent a long time working with Panorama, previous CEE. And one staff member goes, I feel like I just did that. I said, well, it's May now, but you might have done it more recently than the fall. So the first question we're asking our staff, very similar to elementaries, you'll see very similar to the high schools as well. We talk about alignment and questions and patterns that we're looking at. So you might see that. So the question is similar to professional development opportunities, which this information is really helpful for myself, our cabinet, and then also our instructional council as we think about professional development opportunities that we're going to be looking at and investing in for next year and years beyond. I think this looks pretty similar to our elementary friends with regard to sometimes, frequently, and then every once in a while. some of the feedback we got recently was talking more about beefing up PLCs, those professional learning communities, both as in a middle school world, it's this balance of content, but then also the social emotional lens of the sixth grade cabinet really wants to have time to develop conversations around social emotional needs, while also math wants to get together to talk about vertical alignment for curriculum mapping. So it's just looking at data and how we choose to prioritize our time and then what the needs are. Next one, please. The verbiage to this one, how effective do you feel at your job right now? We had a couple more responses. We had a mid-year hire, and then maybe just a few more people when I sent out a couple more emails of begging them to complete this. So looking at that, which I'm pretty proud of this, our staff are working incredibly hard. So for them to be able to self-reflect, to know or feel effective is it's exciting to see. Similar to the elementary, sometimes our classified staff attend these trainings and sometimes they're working with our behavior analysts and sometimes they're just not in attendance. So they are responding to these questions as well, which I think would be a good point. We could separate the two in some ways to determine the effectiveness of them. So our LSCI, Sarah Dominguez and her amazing crew coming out, how has the training been? And this one, overall, and again, conversation for our instructional council about what we're investing in to support our students' social emotional needs. This will be very telling for us. This has been a really large conversation at the secondary level, engaging students who that were typically not motivated. This can be really challenging, and sometimes it's the day-to-day that we know the whole picture of a student, and then other times it's a consistent concern we have with students, and trying to find strategies and entry points for our students in order to support them, which largely is tuned with our LSCI training with Sarah Dominguez. Elementary might have different needs, but a lot of the concerns of our staff at social emotional at the secondary level is apathy and disengagement. So that's been an area of focus for us. Question 5. It aligns a lot to our collaboration. You're knowledgeable in regarding where to find resources for working with students who have unique learning needs. Resources are people, materials, conversations. So looking at how we are supporting our staff as we try to meet the needs of all of our students. Question 6, how positive are the attitudes of your colleagues? This is directly from CEE. We've been looking at this one for as long as I can recall. So overall, it feels, and I think Director Greenhair noted the extremely positive versus, yeah, day to day we're doing well versus the, are we 100%? And I don't know if we want to have that all the time in our lives. So this feels pretty good for the state of where we're at with our students and the trust we're working on building, because we are having some big conversations as a staff and what we're doing with that information. That kind of feeds right into it. To what extent are staff trusted to work in the way they think best? There's always this balancing act of autonomy, but also alignment to curriculum and then the needs of students. So it's a balancing act that it seems that we're meeting the needs of our staff so that they can feel confident in their professionalism to do what they need to do. School leaders, myself, others, and then staff. I have a lot of faith in my staff, and I'm hope we can maintain. This last one, similar to the elementary schools, the 1 to 5 scale, so it comes out as a bar graph. We're having pretty difficult conversations right now. Thank you. And a lot of our topic right now is advisory, social emotional, the purpose of advisory, the fidelity to it. So we're all teaching the same thing. And then our commitment with technology has been a big conversation, and we're looking at some shifts in curriculum, delivery model, and our role with students in technology, because we have an obligation to prepare them for 21st century. And we also have an obligation to develop their social emotional and the humanistic side of them. So looking at and challenging each other to commit to some guidelines that we're drafting right now that we're excited to be able to share to all families and all students so that the expectations are clear from each grade level so that they'll see this tiered approach to what they can expect when it comes to homework, when it comes to technology, when it comes to other things. So they can see the expectation and the tiered approach by grade level. And it's a challenging one because we have philosophies and we have instructional preferences that might conflict, but it's looking at it in a big picture way to decide how flexible am I for the needs of my student. And a lot of what we've played around with, a lot of feedback from winter to spring was the protocols in which we're using so that all voices are heard and input is taken and provided and everyone feels safe doing that. And that's my last question for staff.
I had a couple that were interesting. The explore new ideas. I wonder if for both buildings so far, we're getting some of the, I learned this in fall, so it's not new to me anymore in spring. So I wonder if there's something about growing as an educator rather than using new ideas. Just to get like, yeah, it was a new idea back in fall, but it's not anymore. But I'm still learning using something that I learned this year. Something to weigh on that. Professional development question, I think that depends on what's being offered at the moment also, because like what's being offered in the fall may have been more effective than what was being offered in the spring. So that's something that I think we can keep an eye on to see what people tend to like longitudinally year after year. The one I really noted being the spouse of a teacher, difficult conversations take energy. May is an incredibly difficult time for staff. They are weary. You all know this. I'm saying this for the camera behind you. And so I can see very easily where some of those 3s may have slipped to 2s or the 5s may have slipped to 4s. Like I feel comfortable doing this. I just don't have the energy to do it right now. So I think it's actually a really good sign that there were so many 4s still on that one, considering how draining this month is in particular.
And I'd like to note, I'm noticing was that it went from 14 between 4 and 5 to 20 between 4 and 5. So although the 4s rose, they moved from 3 and the other way. So that was, I was really proud of that too.
Yeah, the bar graph, if you aren't looking at your XYs, it looks flat, but it's actually not because the increased amount of people respondents in the spring.
Yeah, that was a note that I was going to share offline is we can set the scale the same on the 2 bar graphs.
All at Google though.
I have a wondering that spans across all the buildings, which is when there's a staff question that's the same across the buildings, yet the responses are very different. Is that just due to the small sample size or just different teachers in the different buildings? Or is there truly a difference in either the effectiveness or whatever is being measured? And if so, is there something that as a leadership team you can all learn from each other?
The one thing, I don't know if you want to respond to that.
No, it was just
Okay.
it was simply a wondering. I think it's far too big of a question to answer here.
Definitely have some answers to that, but we can, for time purposes, we won't respond right now.
And I don't think we need the answers to that. I think we just need to know that y'all are thinking about it.
For sure. Yep. Are there any other notice and wonderings for our middle school? If we go back to the slide deck, I know that you also added some, you spoke about it in your review of the survey data, but you also did a couple of slides on how you engage in the action. So I don't know if you want to hit on those or if you feel like you hit on those already.
I don't think it speaks well to the actual responses. I think it's more comprehensive in speaking. I can edit that so it aligns more to what I shared if for the sake of having it memorialized.
Okay. All right. And now thank you. And now we'll move to Mr. Patton. And I do want to recognize that these folks are, they're presenting their best face right now, but they are also, they're maxed out. So I'm really proud of how they've their continued perseverance and their leadership that they're showing to their staff and to the community. Go ahead.
Callahan, 3 weeks graduation? 3 weeks. Think about that. This year's gone fast. So it looks like up first is our staff survey. Couple things. So this is the first year that we've tried our own format, and we used a combination of things, Panorama, CEE, and some things like that. So going through this, there's some things specifically that I would like to change in actually the questions and how I rolled it out. Basically, I sent my high school staff list on my email, the survey, which includes everybody, which I think is good. But in reflection, I think next time I would like to break it out into classified and certified. I think with classified, if you got any more specific with custodian, kitchen worker, et cetera, you lose that anonymity. It's not anonymous. So that's one thing. And there's a couple questions that I would like to change, but as a group, we will talk about that before we move forward. So first question, staff at school, how valuable are the available professional development opportunities? 42% in winter. And then I think what happened is we had a really great last Sarah Dominguez training. And I have to tell you this, Justin Silva is an incredible actor. So Justin Silva was the troubled student, and he mimicked, a lot of the other staff know, he mimicked some of the behaviors of a specific class that he has in the spring involving freshmen. And the facilitator was the one talking the student down, intervention, and it was just a riot, and he was great. But I think the staff really, bought in at that time because they saw and they knew and they had that connection. So that was a neat thing. So you do see a big increase in the spring. So pleased with that. Let's go to the next slide, next question. How effective do you feel at your job right now? This is called the spring rebound. Okay, I think we talked about it. You see a drop. And again, I think there's many factors. We'll talk about it when we talk about the student survey, but I think high school construction is starting to wear on us a little bit. It's closing in. Like the library in English, it's funny because the windows one by one are starting to be boarded up, and it's just kind of eerie and you can't see outside. So we're getting through it. Again, 3 weeks left, right? Let's go to the next question. How often do your social emotional learning, professional development opportunities help you explore new ideas? And it was pretty much the same. In fact, if you were to look at these two and compare them to middle school, it's almost exactly the same, the numbers. Go to the next question. How confident are you can engage students who typically are not motivated? And that was, it stayed about the same, not a real huge improvement. And it's really how many different tools can you give our teachers and classified? And that's what we're working on. And I think we're doing I think Sarah really has been a hit, and I hope we continue using her. I think it's not a one and done. It's a program we need to continue on. Next question. How knowledgeable are you regarding where to find resources for working with students who have unique learning needs? There was an increase in the spring. And again, I think that's to our PD. I really do. And I also think we had some PLCs at the high school level. I think that helped in talking about data, curriculum, and some other things. Next question. How positive are the attitudes of your colleagues? Again, pretty high. Pretty high. Next question. To what extent are staff trusted to work in the way they think is best? Again, we saw improvement in that area. And I think a lot of that, I can't prove it, but my hunch is we really had to relook at some of our basic discipline procedures around cell phone policies, attendance tardies, hallway passes, just real basic things. And I think it was kind of out of whack because of construction. And department heads and I came up with some plans, and the staff was really happy, and I think it's been really effective. So we're pleased with that. Next question. How much trust exists between school leaders and staff? This is a question I want to change. I want to change the phrase school leaders to your principal, because I want to know specifically, is it me? Is it something else? Because you think about it, staff, you think of what school leaders are. That might mean something differently to different staff members. So I want to put me, and I want to see. CE, I was a little frustrated with that too, because it didn't specifically call out principal. A couple questions it did, but not comprehensively. Next question. How comfortable are you willing to engage in difficult conversations with colleagues? It's fours and fives. So that's good. Okay, is that it, or is there another question? That's it. Okay, any questions about staff?
No questions. I just noticed something in that, I think it was the first question, the SEO, or second question, the SEO one, that strongly negative responses almost disappeared and were basically replaced by strongly positive responses, which I thought was fantastic. Like almost everything stayed the same, except that 7.9% of almost never was basically split in half between that and the exact opposite of almost always, which I think is demonstrative of most of the things moving slightly up, even though the other numbers look the same, which I think is great. That was the only thing that really jumped out at me. We're starting to see some patterns school to school, which I think is reasonable to be expected and good.
I love that Susie and Kayla fix the kids before they get to the high school. Appreciate that. So the student wellness survey, you're going to see the questions, that same basic 3 questions. You're going to see more, but the basic 3 questions. And we started that, I think, during COVID. I had a pretty dynamic principal intern. I can't remember her name, but she, I think, came up with the questions. What was her name? Kayla Phillips. Overall, how are you feeling about school? Why construction is happening? It indicates that it's mostly fine, but my conversations with staff at the last couple of weeks have been challenging. And you're looking at the biggest thing is day by day they might be doing loud work in one area, so it might affect one teacher, and so little things like that pop up. The construction crew has been great and working early in the morning before school and after school. So again, I think. Can I interrupt, or can I stop and ask Lulu and Callahan, how's construction going? How does it, why don't you share lunch today?
Yeah, we did have a little table set up at lunch today, and students were able to come up, and we did get a few questions, I think. Yeah, mostly people interested in job opportunities, but there were some good questions as well. Yeah. I would say the construction noise has only really impacted me when I'm in one of the turntable rooms. But ultimately, like as far as noise, I haven't had any other like experiences really. I mean, I know like some of the hallways are closed off, but for me personally, I think it just depends what classes you have and where you're going and where you kind of hang out, because I haven't been very strongly impacted by it, but I know some students have.
Yeah, kind of going off of that and off of what Mr. Patton said, it's really like on a day-to-day basis. Like a couple of my classrooms are pretty consistently impacted, but then a couple other of my classrooms are impacted like only once in a while, and it really just shifts. And yeah, I don't know. I think students kind of feel that too.
But I'm very appreciative of our students and our staff. They really have been resilient, and I really appreciate that. Next question. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how is your mental health at the moment? And I think I figured it out. It's about 80% or more, or 7 or higher. And that's really good. That's what we want. Next question. How in the past week, how often have you felt supported by a teacher, et cetera, with schoolwork, small or even big problems? And you're looking at frequently, almost always is your main percentage, and that's what we want to see. And you look at these questions, and you go back even 4 or 5 years, we've been staying, maintaining steady at high percentages where we want to be. Still want to be 100%. Next question. Is there a staff member basically that you can reach out for help if you need to? And we have 88% stayed the same. And again, this is the question where we go, we went over the fall survey with our whole staff, and also our SST team, which is our student support team, and also our spring, we haven't gone over with staff, but we have gone over with our student support team. And the good thing is in the spring, only one student said no to all 3 categories that we're going to talk about. So of course we reached out to the student, and I hope you know, if they say no, they don't have a staff member to reach out, that we go to those. In fact, we have one gentleman for the past 3 surveys said he didn't have an adult to go to. He was playing games with us. So I think he was checking us if we were following up. So I thought that was pretty good. Next question. Do you have a friend? A lot like the middle school, real high, mid 90s, doesn't change much. There are students, maybe they are new, or they just haven't found that niche, that belonging. And what we'll do is we look for lunch groups, activities, clubs, try to connect them with something that's going on in the school, some type of activity. Okay, next question. This is very high, just like middle school, which I feel blessed for our community. Other districts are not this fortunate. This is big. This is huge that students can have that high percentage number that can count on an adult outside of school. Next question. The middle school showed us up on this. What was your spring? 90%, 85%. It was higher than ours. It raised a little bit. The challenge is during advisory, we want to make sure we have multiple mental health wellness specialists. So making sure that our students know each of them can be challenging. But what we do in the fall is we have those workers go to each advisory and introduce themselves. What's their role? I'm from the county. I'm from ESD. This is what we do. This is how you get a hold of me. Okay, next question. That's it.
I think this wondering is for kind of all the schools now that we're starting to be able to connect dots. Thank you to all of you for that. I really love that each principal talked about how you reach out to kids who offer answers that might cause some concern or that they're struggling. And success is such a relative term. But my wondering, and again, this is too big for this room, but my wondering is, how successful is that? Like how does that like extra engagement with those students actually, sort of lift them and help them feel more belonging and help them feel like they do have support. So that would just be some interesting anecdotal data that would be that I wonder about.
And I think, and I'm not speaking for you, but I know we all do this and our teachers do too. But like I probably have 5 or 6 students every morning that I look for, and I make sure I check in, see how they're doing. And I guarantee there's teachers, classified other staff members that do the same thing. And it's really neat to see, because sometimes you can see a teacher doing it and like maybe over in so I'm really confident in our staff.
I think something that we could use for that anecdotal data to get some harder data behind that is maybe look at just having a number to the side that is people who said no on both of these, just the number, just so we can see like, okay, there were 18 people who said no here and 17 there, but only 3 of them were the same. So those people are probably going through something. It's not a long-term problem. It's a specific spike of a social problem.
And I think I shared that type of data with you either last year or the year before, where how many students only said yes in one category, 2, 3, or 0.
Well, I'm thinking the same category, the 2 different surveys, how many of the no's are the same kids?
Yeah, we do. Yep.
Yeah.
We look at that.
So I know you know that,
Yeah.
but that would be an interesting thing to share, to show the effectiveness of some of those techniques.
I really liked the format of this presentation, the mock BLT. I thought it was a lot more engaging than a traditional presentation. And also it gave me a deeper understanding of the work that you all do, which I feel like will make me more effective at my work. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that this is a fantastic first year of our own custom internal surveys. I think that it's a great foundation to continue to do good work and expand it. A couple of things about the high school students in particular. I think this was true, that the students were feeling better about learning during construction than staff were. I could be misremembering that, but that was interesting to me.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And it wasn't by much, but yeah. I love who surveys the surveyors, the kid who is testing y'all. I love that. And again, to your point, the high community support is just so huge. And we saw it in each of those student surveys that there are people in this community looking out for these students, whether they're coaches of youth leagues, whether they're members of churches, whether they're guardians, whether they're family, friends, whoever it is. The amount of support that this community gives to these students is just spectacular. Anything else specifically on the high school before we open it up to larger issues? Yeah.
So I want to speak to that last piece. As someone who worked with an outside agency, that's one of the questions we do when we see kiddos for assessments. And I can only speak on behalf of Coupeville and North Whitby and homeschool students. None of them, I guess that's a strong word. Very few knew who their people were. Counselors, drug and alcohol counselors, and other classified staff. So that's huge. I love hearing that because that always concerns me is they're not being identified. They can't get help or support. My other thing I noticed, like you said, just kind of an overview of things. Some of these questions resulted in similar from the CE survey and some were different. I'm kind of curious to know, because I'm a data survey. I mean, we rely on that working in community health. So I'm just kind of curious to why there was differences, how people were questioned, how the questions were asked. And I'm one of those people I'd love to see farther back data. I know you guys remember certain things as in your position, this was the same or this was different. Visually, though, it really can paint a different picture. And so for future presentation, do you think you could include just like like we did with academics, then we can see the cohorts, how that goes and see, is things improving? Are we hitting a good baseline? Are we dropping? Are we like, a lot of them, like Mr. Patton was bringing out, we're good, like we're up here. So I guess I question the differences in the CEE. And that's just my curiosity because I saw a lot of similarities and I'm thinking, okay, that's different than what the CEE represented and found. So that was more of a curious.
And I appreciate that. As we reflect on this, I think one of the things CEE, you're paying for it and you have people in that organization that's doing the data dive for you and building out the data and then pulling together the data for you and then presenting it to you. We don't have a data person. We do not have the capacity for a data person. I'm impressed with what our leaders did today. We continue to deepen our practice around having data conversations. And so we just, as we think about this, we need to recognize that that is a little bit of a gap. So when we talk about when we have a platform where we're paying for an organization to do some work and present to us, we're going to have a different quality of product and a different quality of information. At the same time, I said in that meeting, and I feel like this was more beneficial to me than the last survey review last year. But this has to be beneficial to other people. So that's going to be a struggle for us. Is we will have this data and we can be able to start from this standpoint and going forward. But going back and doing the data analysis through all of that treasure trove of multitude of data, we'd have to have some dedicated time to do that. And I just don't know what our capacity is. So I just want to be clear about that.
Well, and some of those questions are very similar, but changed wording in ways that could impact the results pretty strongly. There are folks in the community, I'm pointing at myself here, who would also be willing to help out with some of the data work, crafting longitudinal views. And I am happy to put myself at your disposal for doing that if that is something you're interested in. Separate from me as a board member being very interested in longitudinal data. So I could be the cause of and the solution to some of those longitudinal problems. I love to see the thoughtfulness on the questions and the format throughout. I think that creating surveys is not easy. It is a specialized skill, and it is something that I can see the thoughtfulness behind the phrasing of these questions, and how they've been shifted, how some of them have been shifted where they weren't quite working. I think that this is something that will benefit our districts, not just this year, but going forward to create that capacity and knowledge base of how to craft surveys and how they have worked in the past. So I'm very excited to see how that continues to grow. And I recognize the significant amount of hard work that went into not just creating these presentations, but crafting those questions, getting them out, and then bringing all the data together to present this way, and very much appreciate that. And I know that it's not just a low energy period for teachers. It is also for everyone involved in education. Anything else on this?
I just want to thank you, each of you. This was something that was important to you, and you took the level of importance of the ask and you met that with the response when given that to you, and you took it very seriously, and you really have done some great work. And it is not easy to do this. And so I really, really am grateful and appreciative of when you have a desire to do something, you take it, and you take it with a level of intentionality and intensity to make an effort to support our students and staff. So thank you.
Agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that we can probably, unless you have specific input on the policies, there's one that I have a question that I want their input on. And luckily it's the first one on the list.
These are all student policies. We talked about doing these together while they're here. I'm
Excellent.
sorry, we're going to get through them quickly.
Wonderful. Yep. So we will now move from the presentations to policy review. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Clifford, who's going to take the lead on this time.
Yep.
Yours.
So all three of these policies, just overarching, they are updated to align with the WASDA. WASDA has updated policies, and these are WASDA aligned policies. And this policy had not been updated in a while, and we will also be looking at the procedure. So that is, it's really not substantial. But just confirming the protocol and process for releasing students.
I did have a question on this. The removal of designee from superintendent or designee, principal or designee. is that going to add unnecessary work to principals? Because I know that currently some of the front office folks handle making sure that a student is being excused to a approved person. And I don't want to create a bottleneck or put additional work on administrator shoulders. So that's a question that I have for
Yep.
y'all.
The
So I'll look to the
other thing that I see is there is the line and the request that he, she come to the school for the child. We could switch that. And then there's a his home in the paragraph as well. If we can just switch that to gender neutral language, please.
Yes.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 of them in this one, and they removed guardian in one position alongside parent. There's also a serial comma missing in the last paragraph. Yes, I'm that nerd. Serial commas save millions in some cases.
So administrators, we might be able to, what's your input and feedback on the designee? And maybe we are more specific about who the designee is.
And I think it's situational as well.
Mhm.
Our staff is also always aware of if somebody's coming to check out, we're reviewing what's listed in Skyward or what's not. So it's a conversation of what's the purpose of their removal and what's the history. What do we know? We'd always slow down, get a hold of one of us to review files, review any legal documents we have. So we'd rather make someone wait a little bit. But when it comes to health and this child is throwing up, we'd like them to go home. I'd prefer not to engage in that conversation. I trust the judgment of the nurse. So I think that's maybe something to explore a little further when it comes to the what behind why the student's going home. Discipline or corrective action, we would probably all be in alignment that it would come from us.
Certainly, yeah. I was thinking just being taken to a doctor's appointment or whatever. I know that the front office people here, Deanne here, does a fantastic job of checking everything and making sure that they're on. But that would be a designee in this case, and I don't know that it would be appropriate to, if my brother-in-law, who I've given a note to, or if my father is taking my daughter out to an appointment, if it needs to go to the principal.
Well,
Go ahead.
well, I'd like to pause on this, and I'd like us to be able to take this back and review this. Fair question. And I also want to look at the policy and make sure that those two are going to align when our procedure, and make sure that those two align. So certain things are really clear that we can update. And then this question, I want us to kind of make sure that we're ensuring that students can be released and that there's no barriers to students being released. And I also want to make sure that we have the protections in place that the policy is intending on. And so thank you. And
checking legal would be good on this too, in case there's
100%.
something that's come up on that
Yep.
front. Yeah.
for sure.
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't adding work to our principals unnecessarily.
Perfect. I appreciate that.
And I did want to note that there's a reference to law enforcement, release to law enforcement. We don't currently have a district policy on that. 4310, which is our district's relationship to law enforcement, doesn't mention that. The RCW does, so we're probably covered there, but it does mention in accordance with district policy. In that last line, we do not have that
Good point.
policy currently.
Very good catch. Thank you.
Anything else on this policy?
Thank you. And again, this is just updating, cross-referencing WASDA model policy. And we reviewed, and there's also one thing I want to mention. I think it's in this one. If you scroll down to, oh, it's in the discipline, sorry. So there's not much that changed, it's just updated.
The only thing I had on this was a grammar one, which is down in retaliation, false allegations. In that first paragraph, we need some semicolons since there's a list within a list.
Okay. We will make sure that those are corrected.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. And then finally, the discipline. This has been, the state updated the laws and it's been updated 2 times from WASDA. And so this is the final update. This is where I want to, if you go down to students' fundamental rights on page, well, it's, yeah. And then you go down to unlawful discrimination, number 1. The state has updated what categories are identified as protected classes. And so this represents those. That's why this has increased or has additional categories on there. And so this is really just making some updates to the laws that have been in practice and aligning to WASDA policy.
They did remove guardians from a few places where it was parents/guardians, so we'll need to get that back in.
Thank you.
And there was one in that fundamental rights, point 1. These are all things that are in a manner that does not, and I don't think the is prohibited at the end of that is necessary, but I could be missing something. I'm happy to take the WASDA wording from there, but it seems duplicative. It seems to duplicate the effort of the header of that entire section.
I have an initial review with an attorney, and I will make sure that to clarify that that's not an outstanding concern.
Excellent. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
The board made some pretty significant customizations to this policy a couple of years ago. And so this red line we're looking at right now undoes all of them. And so what I would love is a separate red line that adds the new things from WASDA, and then also notes where changes have been made to areas that we have changed. So that would note a conflict between a customization we made and the new legal wording, in which case that would be a conversation we would need to have. But as redlined now, this wholesale undoes everything, all the work that we did as a board a couple of years ago.
So I was looking at the version last revised August 20th, 2025, which I think is the last time we touched it. And there weren't a lot of differences between that and that I like. There's a lot of redlining, but I think we'd already taken out a lot of this
The
stuff.
intent is still there.
Thank you.
And there are some things on here. I think that we accidentally uploaded a policy from a different district because we were pulling from a number of districts. And normally when we show this to you, we show you the different colored lines. And this just shows the blue lines where things are changing. So I think we can, or maybe we don't, I can't remember that, but I think that is helpful when it's clear.
I think the Anacortes
Yeah.
policy was the one that informed several of our changes the last time,
I don't
maybe. I'm trying to
I don't
remember.
know what you did
Yeah.
before me.
No, I
don't
think so.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that I brought it to our team
Got it.
and we looked at that in WASDA because I helped to update the Anacortes one. I was responsible for that. So I knew, and it had been through lawyers and all of that. So I knew that it met some updates. So I brought both the WASDA model policy and that the WASDA model policy was updated after the Anacortes one. So we reviewed a number of things before we made some updates because I wanted to make sure that the team was very informed in the decisions that they and agreed with the updates that we were making and presenting.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
If I recall correctly, well, at least in my opinion, the most substantive update or customization we made as a district was around disaggregated data reporting of discipline data during the yearly data review.
Because so many of our ends are so small.
But yeah, I think it said something like disaggregated when possible or when appropriate. So I would really want to make sure we don't accidentally undo that.
I think that entire section came out.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I would like
Yeah,
that section
yeah.
to be put back in.
Well, no, I mean the entire section about disaggregated data. Yeah.
The requirement is no longer in here.
Okay, I would like that requirement to be put back in. I think we had a long discussion about it, ultimately decided it was in the best interest. And so I don't see why getting a new model policy from WASDA needs to undo changes we've made when there's no legal conflict.
So it sounds to me like this is something we should do a little more background on and bring back at a later workshop.
Agreed. If we find out that the wording we added is actually against the law, then obviously let's take it out. But I don't want to take out wording that we have added for the local context of our district just because WASDA releases a new model policy. It shouldn't be the default to undo all the work we've done.
Agreed. So, Dr. Clifford, I know it's at the end of the school year and there's a large amount of requirements on the time of the staff. Do you think there is enough time to take a look at those changes that were made specifically last time and see if there are substantive changes to the new model policy? And if there are not, bring it up in the business meeting in 2 weeks. And if there are, push this off to the next workshop.
This needs to go to next year.
Okay.
Because
yeah.
there is matrix, and I'm telling you, and so unless I can do something without the administrators, because we have, there's other appendix in the procedures that we are reviewing in August.
Okay.
And I am concerned that right now I need to think about how we can address this concern. I'm looking at it. I think it's the one that's right up. I think it's mostly, if I'm imagining it's the district will follow the practices outlined right above the district policy and procedure. Based on what you're explaining, that's crossed out. I don't know if that's it, but I'm assuming that that's what you're talking about. So I have some urgency to get this completed, but I also want to make sure that we do it right. And staff does not have the time to do this. So if I have the capacity, I will attempt to try to get this done as soon as possible. And if not, we're going to have to push it off.
I think that's perfectly legitimate. I think it's in particular that last paragraph of that section that you're referring to. The superintendent will include discipline data in the annual data summit, presenting disaggregated data in an anonymized way. That paragraph, I think that's the one that we were in particular looking at.
Correct. And if this is simply a mechanical process of creating red lines between multiple versions, I could probably help with that. If it's something that requires actual educational professional input, then obviously we're back to the capacity of the leadership team.
Yep.
So I am comfortable having the flexibility based on what capacity we have to either address it this upcoming business meeting or push it to a later workshop to discuss it further.
I have a clarifying question. So you're comparing policy that you made specifically for our district versus updated policy from WASDA. Maybe a different lens to look at it through would be, if there were to be an issue, what do you fall back on? Do you fall back on your individual policy within your district? Or if there were to be a complaint, do they fall back on the overall umbrella of WASDA? I mean, I totally get what you're saying, making it unique to our district. But when you make a complaint, most people reference WASDA.
So the district runs on the district's policies until we as a school board adopt them. They do not apply to our school district, even if WASDA has recommended them, because WASDA has recommendations based on their legal and educational expertise, but they do not apply to our district until they are approved by our board.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
If it's just the superintendent will include discipline with the data summit, not disaggregated, first of all, anything below an end we're not showing.
Right.
But we can keep that in. If it's just that sentence, we can keep that in.
Yeah. And I think it is, but we'll
We
see
can
what
verify.
capacity we have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Those are all our policies.
Oh, there were additional ones on an earlier version of this. I didn't have the latest version. Okay, excellent. If that's all that we have.
Wait, the agenda currently on board docs has more policies on it. Unless it was very recently changed.
Yeah.
We, do you have to do a motion to move those, to remove those?
No, this is just a workshop. We can.
Yes, we are removing those. We are not,
Not,
those,
not prepared to discuss those at this time.
yeah.
Okay.
Those were intended to be removed, and Christy and I didn't have our policy meeting this month, so.
And if those aren't emergency, despite one of the policies being emergencies, if those aren't actual emergencies, we can push them off to a time when we aren't doing survey data summit also. Perfectly fine. And they were minor issues that I saw in those.
Yes, they were
Yeah.
very, yes, they are minor.
Okay. If that is the case, this meeting is adjourned. Good night. Thank you very much.